Uh, but welcome, thank you. This is an annual event that we just simply call Fulbright Day because it's self-explanatory. My name is Kyle Mox. I'm Associate Dean for National Scholarships at Arizona State University, and I direct the Lorraine W. Frank Office of National Scholarships Advisement. And our objective here today is to hopefully provide you some understanding of this wonderful program, how to begin the application process, and hear from some people that have been through the process themselves about what the experience means, how to best prepare yourself for it, and how just to start wrapping your head around it. As you'll find out, it's a very large program, and there's a lot to think about. This is what's considered to be a national scholarship. And so the name of our office, the Office of National Scholarships Advisement, indicates a difference, right? So when we're talking about national scholarships, what we are referring to are awards that come from outside of Arizona State University. These are sponsored by foreign governments, the federal government, nonprofit organizations, a wide range of sponsors. And therefore, there's not a lot of similarities between different programs because they're coming from all sorts of different places. The amounts of financial support can vary widely, the experience, mission, all sorts of things. So because it is so varied and complex, ASU wisely thought to create an office that helps ASU students learn about these awards, apply for these awards, and hopefully win these awards. And so on behalf of my family, thank you to President Grove for creating this office. These are all very competitive. Financial need is generally not a component of these awards. They exist for specific purposes, and so in that way, they are all merit-based. Now, what they consider to be merit varies quite a bit, and that's one of the things that we're going to talk about today is what does Fulbright consider to be their preferences? What are they looking for in candidates? Prestige is a part of this, of course, because they are highly selective. They're difficult to get, and so becoming a Fulbright recipient is a great resume line to have, and it will open doors for you down the line, we hope. In terms of what the office actually does, the full name is the Lorraine W. Frank Office of National Scholarships Advisement, which is obviously difficult to say. So we generally just say ANSA. We do what we're doing now. We publicize these awards, we reach out, we identify students. If you received an email from me, it's because you met certain criteria, meaning that you would be eligible to apply for Fulbright. We manage the nomination process. So for an award like Fulbright, which does require endorsement by the university, we manage that entire process. We ensure that you know exactly what you need to do to submit and also to make sure that what you submit is of the highest quality. So we advise applicants, we help you with the writing process, we answer all of your questions, and in a larger sense, everything we do is intended to support your personal, professional, and academic growth. We aren't just in the business of winning scholarships, right? It's bigger than that. We firmly believe that the process of applying for one of these awards is as valuable as actually winning an award because it will expand your awareness of yourself, what you're trying to do with your life, where you're going, and more importantly, your ability to express that to other people in a clear and concise way. So there's me, in case you don't know what I look like. I am the Fulbright Program Advisor, which means I am the designated liaison with the Department of State for the program at Arizona State University. But you know, this is a big lift, so we share the load throughout our entire team. Joining us today is also Dr. Mitch Habza, who works specifically with graduate students. So if you are currently a graduate student considering applying for Fulbright, along the pathway, you'll end up working primarily with him. Joining us virtually is Katie Salgado, who is just recovering from surgery, unfortunately, but we wish her well. She is our primary ETA advisor. So if you end up applying for the English Teaching Assistant award, you'll end up working primarily with her throughout the process. I've also indicated which of our advisors have familiarity with foreign languages or certain regions of the world. You'll see that I work primarily with study research applicants, people applying for graduate degree awards, or people in the creative and performing arts. Also joining us today is Dr. Lori Stoff, who's also in the front. She works with both study research and ETA applicants. She's got a good familiarity with East European, Central Asian, Russian, so she's our liaison with the Malikian Center if you work with that center at all. Kaya, who you met up front, she is the best person to ask anything logistic related. When is this due? How do I submit it? When is my appointment? Can you tell me where the bathroom is? Anything like that, Kaya is going to be your best resource. Also joining us virtually is Dr. Neela Bhattacharya, who's a little under the weather, unfortunately, but she also co-advises study research and ETA applicants. Both Dr. Stoff and Dr. Bhattacharya are Barrett faculty fellows who contribute some of their time to helping advise our Fulbright applicants. And she does area studies work in East Asia and Southeast Asia as well, and South and Central Asia. And also joining us virtually, because she's a little under the weather, is Shay Masterson. Shay does not take Fulbright appointments, but a lot of our applicants do end up working with her because she works with a number of other Department of State programs, which many Fulbright applicants end up considering because they decide, you know what, I love this experience, I want to be a foreign service officer, and there is a pathway through fellowships to that career as well. One thing you should know up front, you're in good hands. I love being able to just state the truth and have it sound like bragging, right? 12 out of the last 13 years, ASU has been a top producing institution. And in most of those years, we are top producers for both faculty awards and student awards. So today we're talking about student awards only. Earlier today, my counterpart in the provost's office was meeting with faculty who are considering applying for Fulbright. We are one of only 9 universities in the entire country who achieved this feat this year. So that's pretty significant. In terms of context for ASU, we usually see between 50 and 60 applicants per year. I would love to see us get to 100, and I think it's entirely achievable. And the only thing that's holding us back is the awareness, right? As you all know, this is a huge place. You're constantly getting emails. You're constantly getting opportunities thrown at you. So I'm hoping that the more that you get into this, the more you understand how this works, the more that you're talking to other students, say, hey, I think you'd be a great applicant for this. You should really talk to the folks at ONSA. We look at between 15 and 30 winners every year. We're just partially into the award notification for the current cycle. So people that were sitting in your seat last year are now sitting, refreshing their email madly, hoping that they can find out if they're going abroad for the next year. So we so far have, I believe, 3 winners and only 12 reported. We had 74 applicants last year. So we've got a ways to go. Looking at the last 10 years, we've had 180 recipients over the past decade, right? That number is meaningless until you put it into context with the other schools. When you start going down that list, you can see why ASU stands out in a couple of different ways. One, we're one of only 2 public universities on that list, the other one being the University of Michigan, which, as a native Michigander, I do not consider to be a public university. And also the colors are wrong. I grew up in East Lansing. The other column I think is interesting to note is the undergraduate acceptance rate. If you total up all of those aggregate numbers before ASU, it would still not total 85%. And I actually think 86.5. I actually think that's a little low. I think it's actually increased a little bit since I made this slide. And what that tells me is that we have firm commitment from the university to see our charter lived out, right? We measure our success not by whom we exclude, but by whom we include and how we help them succeed. And so this is a slide that President Crow loves, I assure you, because it very clearly demonstrates that it is possible to do excellence to scale. So a lot of people say, oh, you're just swarming the pool, you're probably sending 300 applicants every year. No, in fact, I actually think we could send twice as many. We actually just perform really well because the university has decided to put resources into supporting your application. So I love it when people email me and say, what's the secret? What are you all doing down there? How do you get so many Fulbrights? And they're really disappointed with the answer because the answer is, we work really hard. Also, our students are really committed to service. This is a global university. You have the largest international student population in the US here. We're a really globally focused problems and issues focused university. All of that benefits you tremendously in Fulbright. So a little bit about that program. First off, mark this down because I'm going to delete your email if you do this. It's 1L. It's not Fulbright. It's just Fulbright. There's not a half-bright, it's Fulbright, yeah. Although the pandemic did create half-brights. When people had to get pulled home in the middle of the pandemic lockdowns, they jokingly started referring to themselves as half-brights. So let's hope that none of you are half-bright. It was created shortly after World War II, immediately after the cessation of hostilities by the sale of surplus war machineries. I have some questions about who we sold that to, but that's a conversation for another time. The point of it was to promote understanding between nations, with the concept that if we understood each other better, if we understood each other's culture better than we do, perhaps we wouldn't be engaged in violence and war to begin with. So A couple of the first countries involved in Fulbright were Japan and Germany, right? We had just been involved in armed conflict, and we immediately went into educational exchange, right? So that's the underlying ethos of the program. It's important to keep that in mind as you were thinking about your own application. That is the mission of Fulbright. It's a huge program, right? There's over 10,000 applicants every year, and just imagine the logistical nightmare of managing all of that. It basically provides full funding for academic year-long grants. So that could be 9 to 12 months depending on the country. In most cases, it's 9 or 10 months. There are 4 types of grants, which we'll discuss in a moment, and there's over 140 countries to choose from. So what I tell people, just about anywhere you'd want to go is probably available. There are a few other benefits besides the financial support, right? And when I say financial support, I mean travel, I mean monthly stipend to provide for your living, as well as any kind of research expenditures. There may be tuition assistance available in some cases. But you also get selective preference for federal hiring. So if you do decide you want to work for the government after your Fulbright year, you actually get to skip the line, right? It's like a Disney Fast Pass. It's wonderful. They'll actually have to look at your application before they look at the general pool. You get a Fulbright lifetime Fulbright email address, which to me is an incredible flex. You get to be part of the Fulbright Association, which has just been rejuvenated here in Arizona. It's a very active organization of Fulbright alumni who engage in all sorts of wonderful activities, professional development, networking. And obviously, like I said, Fulbright opens a lot of doors. The eligibility for Fulbright's pretty simple. Because this is a federal program, if you're going to apply through the U.S. student program, you need to be a U.S. citizen. Citizens of other countries can apply for Fulbright as well. This is a multilateral program, but they need to apply through their home commissions, and that is for study here in the U.S., which we'll meet an international Fulbrighter a little later today. We actually, I think at present, are hosting 22 international Fulbrighters here at ASU, which is pretty amazing. But we're talking about the U.S. student program, so if you are a U.S. citizen, you're eligible to apply. You would need to have a bachelor's degree in hand before you start your grant period. So that's the soonest you can apply. So that would mean, if we're going by conventional measures, a current junior who will graduate sometime next year, which means you would have to have your degree completed before you could leave to go. But, you know, that includes current graduate students, it includes alumni, it includes anyone else who graduated a few years ago. That's perfectly fine. There's no age limit, there's no time limit, as long as you have that bachelor's degree completed before you leave to go. So you don't have to apply as a graduating senior. You can wait. In fact, many students do wait a year or two. Many students apply more than once. You can't yet have received a doctoral degree. You can actually be a candidate. You can even have defended your dissertation. You just can't have it conferred yet. So we've had students doctoral students actually use Fulbright as a sort of postdoc in the past. Now there are other requirements depending on the country to which you're applying. So as you read country summaries, you want to look in there. Some of them like specific majors, some of them only want master's students. But generally speaking, it's nice to know that there's no minimum GPA for Fulbright, and there's no specific majors that they're looking for. As I mentioned, it's a big program, right? And so study research used to be the main program. We'll talk about that in a moment. It's been eclipsed in recent years by the ETA program, which is an English teaching assistant program. But generally speaking, yeah, we're looking at almost 2,000, a little over 2,000 grants per year. With that many grants in that many countries, it's difficult for me to generalize about what makes a great Fulbrighter or what the selection rates are, because it varies entirely by country. The two main types of grants, these are the two main types of awards that you have to decide between, are the English Teaching Award and the Study Research Award. ETA, emphasis on the A, because you would be an English teaching assistant. You would be there in support of a lead teacher in a foreign classroom where they are learning English. The age range can vary widely. It can be all the way down to little ones, all the way up to professionals or college students who probably should know better. And you are there to also promote cultural exchange. Teaching English is a skill that can be acquired, but they also want you as a native English speaker there in the classroom to put it in context, to also teach them about American culture. You don't necessarily have to have a background in teaching. You don't have to be studying education at ASU. You don't have to want to be a teacher in the future. Every ETA will be provided 100 hours of TESOL training once they're selected. What they're looking for is good people, right? Good people with leadership skills that have enthusiasm and want to talk and learn from other cultures. Language proficiency does vary by country. So in many countries, you don't need to speak the target language in the home country. In other places, you will need to be able to speak, say, Italian, for instance, to be able to operate in that country. So that's one of the things you want to pay attention to is, do I need to speak the language of the host country? Open study research is exactly that. It's a choose your own adventure. You have 2 pages of blank paper to describe a project that you would like to do. It's an independent academic project of some kind. In some cases, it's very narrow and specific, directly related to somebody's graduate work. In other cases, it's a bit more service-oriented, a bit broader. I can't generalize, right, because there are literally infinite numbers of types of study research proposals. Again, you are there to promote cultural exchange. So even if your project itself does not have a cultural emphasis, let's say that you want to study nuclear reactor design in Switzerland, you do need to talk about how you will be a good ambassador while you're there. One of the interesting differences for study research is that you need to secure an affiliation, and we'll talk more about that in a bit. Well, what that means is that you'll need to make contact in that country and be sure that somebody's waiting for you when you get there, right? We just can't have you hop off the plane and go around knocking on doors at the university asking for help. They need to know that somebody's waiting for you. And again, language varies widely depending on the country needs. Now, 2 subordinate type of study research, and we actually kind of break these out into their own categories as well. Graduate degree awards, which have increased tremendously in recent years as English language instruction becomes more of the norm globally. If you ask me, we should have picked an easier language like maybe Spanish. English does not make a lot of sense. Those of you that had to learn it over time know what I'm talking about. But these are open to any field, right? Basically, you would identify graduate degrees at a foreign university that you would like to apply for. In some countries, they have awards specifically for this purpose. In other ones, you're just applying in the open category and say, you know what, instead of a research project, I would like to do a master's degree at Sciences Po. Again, promoting cultural exchange, you do need to apply for admission to that program. So that's another requirement of this application. It would typically happen after you submit Fulbright. And again, depending on the country and the program, foreign language proficiency varies. The last category I'll mention are the creative and performing arts. Obviously, arts are a wonderful way to engage across cultural boundaries. This is intended for you to study the practice of a creative or performing art, which means that you should have some background, significant background in that art to begin with. So it's not open to any field. If you want to go study organ performance, you need to be an organ performance major, most likely. It's not like, well, I've been meaning to learn the piano. I think I'll go to Germany and study at a conservatory. No, you will need to provide a portfolio or recordings of your previous work so they're aware that you are an artist on the move. So this is a very exciting category, one of my favorite to work with because you never know what you're going to meet. So as I mentioned, there's over 140 countries to choose from. So one of the best things for you to do is to explore on the Fulbright site what countries are available, which ones offer what types of grants, how many different types of grants. You will see that some countries, like Germany, for instance, offer a significant number of grants. And that is because they provide a good deal of their own funding. I think at present there's over 150 grants available to Germany. Other countries, like Fiji, might only have 2, right? And so that's one of the things you'll need to figure out and explore. The thing to know is that you can only apply for one type of award to one country per year. So your decision-making process at the beginning does matter quite a bit, right? So these are decisions we need to make. So as you're thinking about this, you need to think, what types of grants are available in this country. Once you get in there, you'll see that many countries have some very narrow awards or ones that they've come up with themselves. There's an award for blindness studies in Italy. There's a slow foods movement, gastronomic sciences award available in Italy as well. There is a laundry list of really specialized awards to Taiwan, including global health. I think there's one, I don't know if they'll offer it this year, but it was in debate coaching, right? So the individual countries themselves will come up with awards that meet specific needs that they have. So take your time, read through. It's important to consider the competitiveness of a country, right? And so if you take a look and I would love to go to London School of Economics, yeah, so would hundreds and hundreds of other people, right? But they only offer one award. So we want to make sure that you're applying in a category that increases your odds of success. If they do require or recommend a foreign language, right, that's not a mild suggestion. They mean that for a reason, and that's not something you can bluff your way through. So you want to be sure that you have the necessary language skills to be able to function in that country. And they'll also have a category in there that talks about candidate profile, meaning the types of students that they're looking for. Maybe they're looking for students in the humanities, or looking for students in STEM, or their preference would be for older students, or students that are recently graduated. It does run a wide range of qualities that they may or may not have a preference for. I don't have a clear-cut bulleted list of Fulbright selection criteria, because there really isn't one, right? I've observed the selection committees multiple times, and the process itself is truly subjective, right? They're looking for abstract qualities in the applicants. Some applicants do a better job of showcasing them. Some countries, some factors matter more than others. But it's honestly one of the reasons I love Fulbright, because it's entirely up to you to be able to figure out, how do I connect my experiences, my aspirations, my knowledge, skills, and abilities to this audience. And so, in summary, what I would say is, what they're considering as they're looking at applicants is, one, and first and foremost, is the quality of the application, meaning whatever it is that you're proposing, if it's to teach English, if it's to study the size and shape of different fish in the Mekong River, if it's to study piano or this obscure author, whatever it is you're proposing, does it seem very feasible? Do you seem well prepared for it? Have you thought everything through? Is there anything left to think through, or do I just have to press yes here? And that's the one we want. They're looking at your record, so yeah, transcripts do matter, but also your professional record, the experiences you've had, what's on your resume. Grades matter in context, right? So if you're proposing to go do a graduate program, you better have pretty good grades in that discipline, as opposed to something else where maybe your transcripts don't matter so much. Personal qualifications is obviously very abstract. I'll unpack that a bit more in the next slide. But language preparation, and that is measured both through your self-evaluation and also a foreign language evaluation, which you'll go to a language instructor here at ASU, and they'll kind of put you through a quick test and fill out a form. There are preferences specific to the countries which I mentioned, but I would say the last two bullet points are really important to the Fulbright mission as well. One, they want to be sure that you yourself, your project, your entire approach to life will forward the Fulbright mission, right? That's very important to them. Is this going to be a good Fulbrighter? I was just joking with Kai beforehand, because we always have very good success when we reach out to alumni to say, hey, would you like to come sit on this panel, or can you come meet with applicants? And the answer is, if they can do it, is always yes. They're generally pretty busy people. You kind of worry if somebody's always available, like, didn't you have a job or something? But generally speaking, if they can do it, they say, absolutely, yes, happy to do it, because Fulbright doesn't pick jerks, right? They pick really good people that are really interested in helping others, they're people, they're interested in service. And I think once they go through the process itself, they understand the importance of this network of support. Also, with an eye towards diversity, because this is a federal program, they want to send out into the world a representative cohort of the people that actually live in this country, right? And as you know, if you just walk from one side of campus to this other, this is a pretty diverse country, right? We've got people of all different ages and ability levels and backgrounds and interests. And Fulbright really wants to be sure that we're showcasing the breadth of the types of people that actually live and work in this country. So, personal qualifications, what does that mean exactly? Well, things that you can think about showcasing are your communication skills. Obviously, if we're working cross-culture, you need to be a good communicator. Flexibility, adaptability, openness. This is almost a running joke with Fulbright, because any of you that have traveled abroad before, did it ever go exactly to plan? Probably not. Usually the plan falls apart 5 minutes after you get off the plane. But so they want to see that you're an adaptable person, that you have good leadership abilities, meaning that you're the sort of person that steps up and recognizes problems and gets other people on board for things. You are committed to service. You are committed to working with others. And that you have some things to share with your host country, and that can be a background in music, or a background in some kind of hobby, or literary interest, or athletic interest, or things like that. And as I said, you would show your host country a different side of the U.S. So, the application itself is pretty straightforward. Everyone who applies for Fulbright will fill out the form itself, and this is all done online. And that will have spaces for your awards, honors, things like that. You will all compose 2 essays. The English teaching assistants will compose a 1-page statement of grant purpose, whereas the study research applicants will compose a 2-page statement of grant purpose. And this is not British English. What I just said actually means what I said. Statement of grant purpose means you will state your purpose of your grant, right? This is a lot more difficult than it sounds, to very succinctly describe what you're going to do over the course of 10 months in a foreign country more than a year from now, right? And they do, one of the most common questions I get is, how detailed does it need to be? And I put myself on the other side of the table. If I'm deciding who to give $90,000 to, I would want it to be pretty detailed, right? 3 references, which we'll talk about in a moment. And then depending on the type of grant or award to which you're applying, you may need to get a foreign language evaluation. You may need to get a letter of affiliation. You may need to apply for admission to a graduate program. And if you're a creative or performing arts applicant, you'll need to provide a portfolio. To give you some sense of timeline, we are right at the beginning. The application for the next cycle of Fulbright Awards actually opens up tomorrow or the next day. I think it's going to be tomorrow because the first is Saturday. So we are right on time. We're waiting to hear results from last year, or we're ready to get you guys started on your next round. And so we are kicking off with our first Fulbright Fridays workshop on Friday, and we'll be running those for the next 4 Fridays. We're ready to start taking intake appointments, but you'll see the big, long part in the middle is where you all will be working, right? A little bit at a time, over a long period of time. April through August, we expect that you're drafting your applications. You're working with us individually and in groups. You're going to writing workshops. You are revising your essays. You're working with your references. And so that's the ideal time to be working. This isn't a, wow, I'm glad I went to Fulbright Day, and then mark it on your calendar, September, start working. No, 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 no. That's when you're done. That's when you're submitting. So between now and then is when we'll be working on these applications. It's all done online through the Fulbright U.S. student site. There is not a separate ASU application. I'm on the other side of that portal. I can manage it. I can move it around. I know everyone has a deadly fear of pressing submit or having their cat walk across their keyboard and deleting their application. Don't worry. I got you. Nothing bad's going to happen. So as soon as you open an application, I can see you on the other side of that portal. You'll upload your transcripts. You'll upload your letters of your letter of affiliation, and your references will upload their letters or forms to that application. So visit the Fulbright site, fulbright.asu.edu. That's our specific site. It talks about our timeline. It talks about our process. And there's a short playlist there which will reiterate most of what I've said here and just kind of walk you through the basics of Fulbright. Attend the workshops on Fridays if you can. And then once you're ready to actually get started, you're not sure about which grant type or country, but schedule an intake appointment. And you actually schedule that through our website, ansa.asu.edu. Don't be alarmed if you don't see the large green arrow. That's provided for illustration purposes. It's actually not on the website, but there is a button that says make an appointment, which unsurprisingly means make an appointment. And as also Fulbright at ASU, I think the @ sign isn't there anymore. Somebody from marketing sent me a very threatening email that I can't use an ampersand at ASU for some reason. An @ sign. I can use all the ampersands I want, but that's where you'll find fulbright.asu.edu. So again, if you're not on the bulletin, subscribe. But if you want to schedule an appointment, you can do that right through our website. You don't have to email us and say, I'm available Wednesdays from 2:30 to 3:30. Are you? So as you're thinking about study research, if that's the category that you're looking at, the types of things I need you thinking about as you're riding the shuttle bus around the valley or sitting at dinner or wherever you do your best thinking, the primary criterion is feasibility. Can this be done in the place where you propose to do it with the resources at hand, in the timeline given, with your background and preparation? The reason for the location must be compelling. This has to be the best place to do this, right? So I've had people apply to study the preservation of Russian Orthodox churches in rural Ukraine, right? Obviously, you cannot do that somewhere else. But if somebody just says, oh, I want to study music, okay, but why here in this specific place? It should build on your previous knowledge. This is not the time to pick up a new hobby. This should build on what it is you're already doing and connect you to your future career goals. You don't have to be an expert yet. You don't have to be the world's leader in this topic, but you do need to have some preparation to be able to justify the feasibility of the project. And community engagement is a component of every Fulbright application. You do need to address how are you going to interact with your host community? How do you see yourself being a good ambassador for the U.S.? If you're thinking about creative or performing arts, as I said, it's focused on the practice. If you want to study music, that's different than studying the practice of music. This is Jackson, who studied flamenco guitar in Spain. It was a torturous ordeal the whole time there. Just, as you can see, he's really struggling. That's my favorite picture I have. But your supplementary materials will demonstrate your knowledge, skill, and ability in your specific discipline, and it's a really wide range of different arts. If you're thinking about graduate degree awards, Typically, that's going to be a one-year master's degree, which is the norm outside of the U.S. Most, particularly in Europe and especially in the U.K., you can do a master's degree in 9 to 10 months. It most likely will cover all of your tuition and fees. There are some exceptions to that, which is actually the tagline for Fulbright. There are some exceptions to that. It may be in English, but in many cases we have students who apply who have sufficient foreign language proficiency can actually enroll in classes in the target language. You must apply for admission, and to that end, you must be a strong candidate for admission. So as an English major, if I decide I want to go do a physics master's program, I might want to reconsider that choice, because if you can't get admitted to the program, Fulbright cannot help you. Fulbright will not plow you through that admissions process. You have to be a strong candidate for the program in the first place. Those of you that are thinking about ETA, they want to see enthusiasm, which is, difficult to do on the written page, of course, but they want to see that you have enthusiasm for teaching, coaching, mentoring, outreach, working with people. You like to show people how to do things better, right? And that can come in a wide ranges. So many of our applicants do have classroom experience, but a good chunk of them do not. Maybe they're academic success coordinators, or they've worked with Global Launch and tutoring people. A lot of people have worked in community programs helping refugees and asylees with language acquisition. Some just coach youth sports. Some people are just tutors or TAs. So there's a wide range of backgrounds. But they want to know, what else do you bring to the table? What else are you going to explore while you're here? Do you have a specific reason for why you've chosen this country? And how are you going to exchange with your host country community? And again, you've got to connect this experience to your future career. With a great, with some patience and some imagination, we can make that work for any applicant, right? Letters of affiliation, this is kind of down the pathway, but it can be time-consuming to get. Not difficult, just time-consuming, because I don't know if you're aware of this, but the rest of the world isn't obsessed with answering email inside of 24 hours. That's kind of an American thing. And I think in the last couple of years, that's kind of gotten stretched to 36 to 48. But anyway, if you're going to propose an independent project, you will need a letter of affiliation, and we can talk about strategies for doing that, but in reality, they all kind of come back to the same thing. Google it. Find somebody, email them. And you'll find that most people are pretty receptive, right? Because Fulbright has such a positive connotation. They love the idea of hosting a Fulbrighter in their research group or department or university. References should be, good time to think about this now. The major difference, all applicants will need 3. The major difference is that ETAs get a reference form completed. And so as we get into the process, I'll encourage you to take a look at that form, because that will help you decide whom to ask. They actually have a requirement, and many of you will like this, they actually have a requirement that one of the references must not be a faculty member, right? Because they want to hear from some community leaders or volunteer supervisors or things like that. The study research, which includes arts and graduate degree, these are letters of recommendation, and they should obviously speak to your ability to do this project and be a good Fulbrighter. We have a memorandum of guidance that you can give to the people that you're asking to write for you. This is available on our Canvas that we'll get you involved in as soon as we know that you're serious and you're involved in the process. So to that end, we do workshops. We'll be doing group intake advising. Once you get into the process and are getting feedback on your essays, you'll be meeting individually with all those nice people you saw on the earlier slides. We can do these virtually, we can do these in person, we can do them over the phone. We have a very big canvas, very elaborate, in-depth canvas that has a lot of resources there, walkthroughs, example essays, all manner of stuff to help you be a better applicant. And then at the end of the process, once you submit your campus application, you'll participate in a campus review and interview, which is nowhere near as scary as it sounds. I know that we always think of like the final scene in Flashdance or some other 80s movie where the heroine has to overcome a bunch of grumpy old people at a table. This is actually a great experience where people get input from people that have familiarity with this country, with Fulbright, and are going to put that final touch on your application that's going to make it a winner. So there's one of our winners right now who's currently in Finland. So to cut off another commonly asked question, the odds of success vary from 0 to 100, basically. I'm exaggerating, but it really depends entirely on the selection rates in the individual countries. And so you can consult that. There is a statistics tab on the Fulbright site. I'm not going to tell you where it is. You'll have to find it on your own, because I want you looking at the country summaries first. Because a lot of times people look at the statistics and just make a quantitative decision. Like, oh, I guess I'll go to Timor-Leste. I'm like, can you find it on a map? Because if you can't, you shouldn't apply there, right? So you need to make a good choice, and a good strategy and effort will result in a good application. So if you apply to a if you want to apply to a very competitive country that I think can be done in another country that's less competitive, we might have a talk about that, right? Because we want to up your odds of getting a return on the investment of time that you're going to put in there. But keep in mind that your entire life experience matters, right? It's not just about your grades. It's not just about your resume. It's the totality of your experience. And that's why there's also a personal statement where you have a chance to tell your story, to convince them that, yeah, this is the sort of person that I want to send abroad to represent the United States. The other statistic that we're absolutely sure of is that if you don't submit, you won't win. This is known. I can prove it. So I would encourage you to apply because the process itself is valuable. And again, if you want to just access basic information, Fulbright.asu.edu, scheduling appointments. We have a lot of YouTube videos from our previous presentations available on our YouTube page, which can be accessed from the site. We have a Slack channel too, which is grossly underutilized. Maybe you guys are just overwhelmed by Slack at this point, but applicants are surprised how quickly they get an answer from us if they just ask it in the Slack channel. And us.fulbrightonline.org is the main Department of State Fulbright site, and that's where they have all the country summaries and other great in-depth information. So, all right, I've done enough talking. At this point, I'd like to invite our panelists up to the top, up to the podium, so go ahead and take your seats. And they want to share a little bit about their process and their experience of applying. What motivated them to apply, what the experience was like, and more importantly, and I think what's more valuable for you all to hear, is what did it mean in the long run from where they are now in life. So we're going to go roughly alphabetically. And I don't know if we have access to the podium lights at all, but microphone working?
Can we hear me?
Oh, wonderful. So Connor is one of our alumni, and Connor did his Fulbright in Germany.
Check. Yep. I'm going to scoot out of the way because I'm getting blinded by my own photos right now, everyone. Cool. So, hi. My name's, now I'm even more blinded. This is a struggle. I'll just squat. My name is Connor Baskin. I was a Fulbright ETA to Germany, as the slide would suggest, in 2016 to 2017. I studied supply chain management in German, which is an extremely common combination. I think one other student has done that in the past 6 years. So trailblazing and innovation. I'll start with a picture in the upper right, which is actually the reason Fulbright is so significant to me. I did not take a picture with a random woman and put it in this presentation. That would be odd on a number of levels. I was very good friends with a woman named Raquel, and when we applied to Fulbright, went through the process. Along the way, we started dating. You can probably imagine how that turned out because we ended up in the slideshow together. We're married now, and she's at home. She couldn't be on the panel, but she'll be here in the future. She's one of those people who would say yes as well. I think coming to the process, though, everything Dr. Mock said is extremely true, and I would take him at his word. The support you will get at ASU is unparalleled. Post-Fulbright, I went to Indiana University to do a PhD in German. I won a grant to learn Turkish in Azerbaijan, which doesn't make sense on a number of levels, but separate conversation. And I had absolutely no support in that from IU at all. And I actually debated calling Dr. Mox and saying, hey, I'm an alum, can you help me get a CLS grant for another institution, and we can kind of append it to the bottom of ASU awards. But the support you get here is real, and I think it's important that you lean into that in the sense that I remember when I decided I wanted to do Fulbright, I think was my sophomore year. I was sitting in my dorm room after walking through Honors Hall, and I was like, it would be cool to have my face on the wall, which is a terrible reason to apply. And I went to ANSA, and they told me as much. They were like, you're not putting that in the application. And as I dug deeper into Germany, I was like, I'm the guy that's walking around campus excited about language learning, excited about German. I can't talk to Americans about German forever. What if I go talk to Germans about English? And I stumbled into ANSA with this bright idea, and they were like, what if I told you we have a program for you, and it's called Fulbright? And I applied, and I checked when I got my acceptance before coming, and I actually got it on March 29th at 7:39 in the morning in 2016, so that was pretty neat. I guess tips for people: take the language proficiency very, very seriously. Dr. Mox is correct when he says you can't fake that. I think it's very easy to say you're excited about something. I think it's another matter altogether to demonstrate you are excited by actually learning the language. The other element of that is it makes your life a heck of a lot easier. Like many Fulbrighters, I ended up in the hospital during Fulbright, not on purpose. And being able to talk to the doctor in German and articulate my issue as opposed to being shoved in the side room while we waited for an English-speaking doctor at 3 a.m. Was very, very nice. But beyond that, the commission themselves actually interceded and said, we'll get you whatever you need, wherever you need, don't worry about it. So don't feel as though you'll get sent and have no support. Then I'll quickly sum up the other pictures and give the mic to someone else. 50 Shades of Merkel was funny to me because it's 50 Shades of Grey with Angela Merkel, which if you know anything about Angela Merkel, you'd know that 50 Shades of Grey is not really her aesthetic, although we thank her for her service as Chancellor of Germany. In the middle, does anyone in the room read German that wants to attempt to translate this?
9.
I wouldn't want to translate it either, someone with an advanced degree in German. But this basically sums up my attempt to navigate bureaucracy. It says, error, you have 3 further attempts to get your password correct. Afterwards, the Push 10 app will be locked out of security reasons, and you'll have to re-register. Everything in Germany requires a form, and you can't register to get housing until you can prove you have a job, and you can't prove you have a job until you have housing. So there's no wonder Kafka had the success he did writing his books. And on the right, that was a very accurate picture of a day in the life of Connor Baskin. I spent a bunch of time making Anki flashcards, reading novels, and drinking tea, and in some cases beer, and thinking I was cooler than I was, and then going and talking to Germans about that. So I wish that was still my life. I work at Intel now, and it's wonderful, but nothing beats drinking green tea in a downtown old city in Germany. So. Yeah. Big fan of Fulbright, and happy to give the mic to someone else. And if any of you want to talk about applying, just ask. I'll happily help you.
Great, thank you. Yeah, and to reiterate, we will have some Q&A here once we're wrapped up, and we have a reception for everyone here immediately after across the hall. There is actual food and drink and real live people to ask questions. The Wall of Fame in our building is famous, as the name would imply. A lot of people do want to have their picture up, but I have something even better. If you apply for Fulbright, you get a limited edition I hit submit sticker that you can put on your automobile or laptop or water jug. And people can look and say, what is that? Like, oh, I applied for Fulbright. And they can say, did you win? And then you can walk away. But yeah, this is a new program that we came up with this year. But I know, gotta love stickers. Anyway, don't put that in the application. That's not a motive for applying. But Berenice, I'd like to talk about your time in Mexico.
Hi. Okay. My name is Berenice, and I was a transfer student at ASU. I studied at a community college first, and I was touring Barrett, and it has already been said, the Wall of Fame caught my eye. I saw everybody's pictures and all these countries listed, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. Don't know what it is. I'm going to find out. And I learned about Fulbright, and I was like, I also want to be on the wall. And so I just kept that in the back of my mind. Then senior year came along. I was studying business law, and I realized that's not exactly what I wanted to do. Something related to business, but I'm not sure what. And I don't want to just jump into law school not knowing that I want to do this 100%. And then Fulbright came back into the picture. I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to do this. And initially I wanted to apply for Taiwan to do an ETA. And then I kept looking around the map. I wasn't super convinced. I really wanted to do something in China, but China had limited Fulbright options. So Taiwan was like the next best thing. But then I went back on the map and I was looking around and I saw Mexico. And I was like, I've considered all of these different countries in Europe and South America and Asia, but I didn't consider Mexico. And my parents are from Mexico, so I'm like, I'll check it out. And I saw that they have the binational business program, which is very unique to Mexico. They get, I think, additional funding for the program. And I was like, how perfect. The opportunity to live abroad and to have a year to explore something within the business realm. And so it just ended up working out perfectly. I really, really enjoyed the experience to be working for a single family office in Mexico City. If you're unfamiliar with that, it's essentially a family with such a high level of wealth that they have a whole Merrill Edge to themselves, or a Merrill Lynch to themselves, that has like tax accountants, analysts, financial advisors within one roof for one family. So it's a very interesting experience to be exposed to such a different world in a different country, and also learn about just private equity in Latin America, startups, and to see kind of what's bubbling up in a different area of the world. And I'm excited to see what will happen in the next 50 years, just based off of what I saw there. And there was only 9 other BBers, as we call them, in the program at the time, and this second picture to the right of the yellow box, these are all ETAs. And so I definitely had a bit of an ETA experience alongside them. So it was a great opportunity to meet different people from all over the US. I actually just went to Chicago last week 2 weeks ago for St. Patty's. And I met up with like 7 ETAs. So that was a very cool experience. And I think what was already talked about in the presentation, I think my biggest tip is to apply. When I was considering applying, I kept talking myself out of it. I'm like, okay, what if I'm not good enough for the program? What if my GPA isn't as high as other people? What if when I get there, I don't know anything? Yeah, I'm a native speaker, but my Spanish, I've never learned it in a classroom. I've just listened to it and picked it up, so it's not the same thing. So you just push those hesitations aside and just apply. That'd be my biggest tip. And yeah, you'll never know where it will lead you. At the bottom here, this picture, this man that I took a picture with, and the redhead with curly hair in the second row, she's like my 4th cousin, and he's like an uncle. I don't know how far along, but I met family that I didn't know existed while I was there, so that was very cool. And yeah, if you guys have any questions.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, the Binational Business Grant is one of those individual awards that I mentioned earlier that Mexico only offers this award, and it includes an internship as part of it, right? And so look for those hidden gems, and you'll find ones that match up exactly with your interest. I lied. We didn't go in alphabetical order. So Karina, who also went to Mexico, would like to talk about her experiences.
Hello? Okay. So yeah, my name is Karina. How I found out about Fulbright, I actually did a State Department scholarship when I was in high school. I did Nestle, which is the National Security for Language Initiative for Youth. It's a mouthful.
It's not chocolate oriented.
I'm sorry?
It's not chocolate oriented. Oh,
No.
okay.
No, not chocolate oriented.
jokes.
But they're really good. All the State Department programs, they're really good at making sure to follow up and send you emails about different opportunities that you have. And so from there, I did the Gilman Scholarship and I studied abroad. And so Fulbright within those emails like kept showing up. And so I thought to myself, coming from a linguistics background, and I did the TESOL certificate program here at ASU, I was like, oh, this is a really cool opportunity to get some international experience teaching abroad right after like graduating. Because I know one of the biggest fears, I don't know if we have like junior seniors, but after you graduate, you're kind of thinking like, well, what's the next step? How do I get more experience? How do I like put myself out there, make connections? And so I decided to apply for Fulbright. All of these pictures, as you can see, they range greatly. This top picture up here where we're like in Halloween costumes, it was actually an event that was just supposed to be a Halloween costume contest. And I was like, all right, like, let's get some of this American culture in there. But my students in Mexico are very proactive and love to get out of doing any kind of additional work. So they proposed to me and were like, hey, what if we make this a competition amongst all the classes? Because over there, it's like ranged from like 6 different types of classes. And I was like, okay, let's talk to the other teachers about this. And one thing led to another. They actually turned it into a Halloween dance-off competition where one of the classes actually, along with a teacher, they partnered up and they started having like a live music session right during the middle of lunch. So this was an amazing opportunity for me to see like, wow, like the students here have a really different type of like learning style. And even though we weren't sitting down in the classroom, like going over worksheets and all that, they were learning about our culture, and again, having that intercultural exchange, as Dr. Marks, mouthful, Dr. Marks has explained. So it was really interesting. And over here, the same thing. We had, I don't know if you can tell, but they're kind of like dressed up like turkeys, because I was like, you know what? They're very active. Let's make them do a turkey trot. But along those ways, if you're nervous about kind of like the activities that you can do for teaching English, you don't really need to have that background. There, all I did was like they're being active, and along the way they got to pick up like they had to like solve like these English sentences and work within a team. So it's like they were running around the school but still learning at the same time. So you get to like develop these creative type of activities as part of the program, partly because in a lot of these schools they don't have the resources that we typically do here. So you have to like really think outside the box. And then other parts of it in general, if you see here in the middle one, this was kind of like my project or my my activity to engage within the host community. I actually joined a traditional dance group. And this was at my performance with two of my lovely young ladies that were dancing alongside me. So that was really interesting for me because I've always wanted to connect with my own culture, and I love to dance. So I was like, yeah, let's do this. So it pushed me to like get outside my comfort zone in that sense. The picture over here where you see everyone, that was actually a teacher training workshop. So honestly, with the ETA grant, you're able to see different types of opportunities when you want to go into teaching, if that's something that you're interested in. For me, I specifically listed on I think it was my statement of grant purpose. This is why he said be detailed. And I said I wanted to teach high school students. And so they were able to give me kind of like that placement. But overall, I would say doing Fulbright opened up a lot of opportunities for me. Going forward, I did do my master's program in Egypt. And one of the big things that they focused on during my interview was Fulbright. They kept asking me so many questions about it. And I believe thanks to that, I was also able to get a teaching fellowship, which covered my whole tuition, stipend, while being in Egypt. So Fulbright, just having that name on there really does open up so many opportunities. So again, as my fellow colleagues here have said, if you would like to talk more about Fulbright and the ETA position, please feel free to reach out.
Great, thank you. And Karina, don't worry about the Marx thing. My high school principal called me Karl Marx in front of the entire school one time, so no relation at all. But one of the other things we like to do every year as well is to invite our visiting Fulbrighters who are here from countries around the world, because I hope it helps you understand a bit more about the true cultural exchange nature of Fulbright. It's not just Americans going abroad, it's us welcoming folks from around the world as well. So welcome to Njeta, who is from Cameroon, and he'd like to talk about his experience. He has, as he titled it, My Fulbright Journey, which I love.
Hello, everyone, and thanks immensely for this great opportunity given to me to share my Fulbright story. That is my Fulbright journey. Before I write on, I do acknowledge the fact that many Americans don't understand my accent. It's quite unfortunate, but I plead with you, if you don't understand me at any point, please let me know. First things first, I will surprise some of you here to let you know I am here in America, in the US, for my second Fulbright Award. I was here in 2015 for the Fulbright Teaching Excellence and Achievement Program. which is another US government exchange program for teachers. That was at the Appalachian State University in North Carolina. But before coming to the US then, yes, I used to hear about the Fulbright program. But for me, it was I felt at that time it was a program for those of the, should I say, A-grade class. I hope you get me. Yeah, so I knew it didn't concern me in any way. So within the Fulbright program, that is in 2015, I met a Pakistani teacher during one of the Fulbright workshops in Washington, D.C. She told us amazing stories, how the Fulbright program transformed her into a leader whom she went back to her country and was doing great things. I was greatly inspired by her stories. And at that time, I looked at myself being in the US just for a period of 2 months, and with a lot of things I'd learned within that time. Because I already found myself energized, I knew I was going to do great things back in my country. I took an engagement that I was going to return, equally do great things like her, so that I one day have that opportunity to come back. And that is how my Fulbright dream started. I returned to Cameroon, created the Cameroon Fulbright Tea Alumni Association. I know it's a big word, but I championed the creation. And I was elected the pioneer president of that association. I brought together all existing Fulbright Tea alumni in the country, and we started working together, running projects. I gave them the idea that the US government had funds. So this is some of the things we have to know, you the Americans, that you are actually creating initiatives in other countries of the world. So we used to apply for grants and we win grants. And I have managed close to 100,000 US dollars project funds. So through projects on the COVID-19, during the COVID-19 pandemic, we ran a project called the COVID-19 Brigade for Safe Schools in Cameroon, countering violence in school milieu, promoting climate justice through school communities, promoting STEM education, just numerous projects we ran. But while I was engaged with that extent, I had in my mind my Fulbright dream. I would really want to come back to the US and become a real Fulbright. Because to me at that time, the Fulbright Teaching Excellence Achievement Program, I really felt it was not a real Fulbright, though it is a program of its kind. I started applying for the program the first time in 2018. I wasn't lucky. Second time in 2019, I sailed through. I was nominated. I think this should help some of us to know. When in some countries, applying for the Fulbright, you have to do that in 2 stages. The first stage, the Binational Commission selects you and then nominates you. So the first time I applied, I crashed out of the race at the interview stage, meaning that I wasn't nominated. The second time, I was nominated right to the final stage. That was in 2019. And then when the COVID-19 pandemic came in, things dragged on for long, and I did not even know when I crashed out of the race. I felt like giving up. But again, I missed the application season in Cameroon window the following year due to the lengthy nature of the COVID-19 pandemic. And in 2022, I said I was not going to give up. Okay, this long story is just to let some of us know for us to know how tedious, how challenging it can be. Because of the amazing works I was doing back in my country, was no guarantee that I was just going to be given the award. I had to work extremely hard for it. And then secondly, winning a second Fulbright award it is not easy. It is not easy. It means you have to convince the US government that you are worth a second Fulbright award. Given that normally the program coordinators will prefer to give opportunities to other people. And I'm equally happy with what Dr. Mark said a while ago. There is no fixed criteria in selecting you for the Fulbright program. You just have to benefit from the ACEs. And in my case, we have the statement of interest and the personal statement, where you have to paint yourself I believe Americans are too good at that. I learned that from the US. Present yourself, personal statement. You talk about yourself in the past, present, and future with respect to your Fulbright goals. And the study objectives, I will just limit myself to my own application. You equally try to talk about yourself with respect to what you want to study. I was happy with one of the examples Dr. Max gave a while ago. For instance, you can't be studying physics and you want to go and study English language in a different country and other like. So these are some of the things. So let me just quickly rush back to my photo. Yes, I equally made it to the Fulbright program finally. A dream come true after 4 to 5 years of struggling to win the award. So that is why I serve at the U.S. Embassy in my country. So normally when you receive the award, you are like, first of all, you have what we call the pre-departure orientation. I'm certainly sure it certainly takes place here in the U.S., where they like prepare you, tell you about the U.S., what you have to do, the do's and the don'ts of the country. Though it is not really complete, given that in some situations you still arrive the U.S., you are welcome, you are given courses on U.S. culture, U.S. education system, and American life. So at the embassy, this was after that event. And then I was lucky to have arrived the U.S. last year on the 2nd of July, where we participated at the pre-academic, the Fulbright pre-academic studies program that was at the Drexel University in Pennsylvania. So it was, I mean, to me, that was the apex of my Fulbright experience. Given that we were close to 40 of us from about 30 countries, so you can imagine, so we're living in a community, all of us quite excited to engage into the Fulbright journey. And the first opportunity we had was to learn about other countries, to know Fulbrighters from other countries. We shared our experiences together, and I think by doing that, we learned very much, while also learning how to fit squarely into the American context, given that moving into a new community like the US, equally as you, some of you will move to other countries, you have to learn how to live in those communities. So I would say the pre-academic studies program really facilitated my integration into the US, even though I was coming back for the second time. So, okay, I have no photo here from the Drexel University. Okay, celebration of a 2022 Thanksgiving Day with an American family at Gilbert in Arizona. I think this is something I will never forget. This family was quite excited. In the first place, I knew nothing about this family. I just received a mail from them. Probably, I think they got my contact through the International Student and Scholar Center. And we had a great time. And at the moment we were leaving, the family was like, oh, if we could stay further. So we talked to them about our countries, about our culture, about our experiences. They were quite excited to learn about that. And from them, equally, we learned much about the American culture. This is just one of such events I've experienced here. And I will let you guys know that I am open and excited about such invitations. If you feel you can invite me at your home to come and equally share to you my experience, talk to you about my country, how the people in my country look like, that is the goal of the Fulbright program. We are here in the US for that. Not only myself, any other Fulbrighter, if you see us, please feel free to invite us in your home. Feel free to invite us to events. That is what we've come. Use the opportunities to learn about our countries and our cultures. And then this is myself. I think I was volunteering in an ASU zero waste project just here in Tempe. And equally, I was volunteering in a Walk to Save Animals program, which took place, I think, in the month of November or December, down here at the Tempe Beach Park. So these are just a few of the activities I've engaged in here in the US. And as I told you, I'm excited, and lots of people have been inviting me. As for my studies, actually, it is moving on well. I'm sorry, Mr. Max, I talk very much. I am here. I'm pursuing a master's degree program in environmental and resource management at Polytechnic. But again, I will just shock some of you. I have a lot of things which many people may not know. I have 2 bachelor's degrees, one in the teaching of physics and the second in physics. I am here for the 3rd master's degree, though it was with a lot of difficulties that I engaged in the 3rd master's degree. The first is in the teaching of physics, the second is in environmental engineering, and this is the 3rd in environmental and resource management. But again, it came because I was just like eager to have the Fulbright scholarship experience. And when I got it, I said no. So to me, having the Fulbright experience is more of a brand. I was happy when Dr. Marks was like saying it to me is a brand, and I'm just so proud to be part of that community. And I do hope what I've said here, it will really go a long way to encourage prospective Fulbrighters or for prospective Fulbright applicants. Yes. All what we are saying is not to discourage you, but just to let you know you have to sit down and work and work and work, and that's the only secret to make it. Thanks for your kind attention. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah.
And the offer is, if you do want to engage with any of our international Fulbrighters here at ASU, you can reach out to me, or you can just reach directly out to the International Students and Scholars Center. It's one of the things we actually like to do with applicants towards the end of the process, so you can maybe connect with somebody from that part of the world and get a better sense of, are my ideas for community engagement sound? Do I know what I'm getting myself into? How familiar am I with the host country? And I hope that provided you some context of what it would actually be like for you as that ambassador in a country where people are inviting you over for festive dinners or to community events or for volunteering as well. So, and finally, Jacob Zarate, who did his ETA in Spain.
I did, yes. Hello, everyone. My name's Jacob. 2018, 2019, I was in Spain as an ETA. Hi, Alec. How are you back there? We were there together. I tried to include the picture. I don't know if you remember us squatting in front of the Fulbright España 75, 60-year anniversary, but
I have that
the
one.
orientation didn't. You have it? Okay. Anyway. So this was just the year after I graduated from ASU, from undergrad. But yes, definitely, if you're thinking ETA in particular, I would hope that you're at least somewhat interested in teaching or students. That's definitely something that will be helpful to you, not just during your time there, but obviously during the application process. Like Karina, I was interested in working with high school students in particular. So if there are different ranges of students in a particular country that you're interested in, make sure that you have a reason, that you have maybe some experience, some background. Even just listening to Dr. Max's presentation, I didn't realize how far in advance you kind of have to apply and think about this program. So that summer window, now that the Fulbright application will be opening on April 1st, I was actually in Spain doing some internship credit for a TESOL certificate. So I was kind of on that path and had kind of heard about Fulbright. I guess a few years prior, I had applied for a Gilman scholarship, so I'm sure I was on the ANSA kind of mailing list, and it didn't necessarily I didn't know that it was something I could do. It just kind of came about naturally as my interests here at ASU kind of changed as I became maybe more interested in teaching English and working abroad and living abroad as well. So Spain, I kind of chose Spain because it's an excellent place if you haven't been or are interested. But also because numbers, there are a lot of ETA grants, so I figured, hey, why not, give myself at least some odds. Obviously, quantitative considerations are not the only considerations, but I felt a little more confident applying, knowing that, hey, maybe there's actually more than a 0 or 1% chance in my head that this was something that I could do. And so that summer before I was actually in Spain, that was the first time I went to Spain. So I knew okay, if I'm going to be applying, let me actually take steps. Even if you're saying to yourself will I actually be able to do this, study, research, ETA, whatever it may be, do, if you can, if you have time, plan something that you can do now that may inform your kind of application experience. I would say would be my kind of advice. I feel like it ended up happening for me, fortunately, in terms of I was able to take steps ahead of even the application to, oh, wait, maybe I am qualified, or actually I do have some good experiences that I can mention. These are all just pictures of the students in the school I was working with. My parents even came to visit me at one point. That's them too, and I'm next to them, so I know the students were excited about that. This is their graduation for the seniors. We had a fun trip with the juniors to London. That was actually quite nice to go on like a high school field trip, but not as a high school student, and to be cool and an adult in London, which is nice. So yeah, I would just say an excellent time, and really more than anything, I mean, for me and hopefully for other ETAs, and if you're considering ETA in particular, that's obviously what I know about. I would hope you're, passionate about young people, helping young people kind of find what they're interested in. Obviously, English can be a very useful language in terms of next steps, and we're very fortunate to, if you did grow up speaking English natively, like that's actually a plus in a lot of places, even in Spain, which you would think it's like, oh, like what is English special in Spain for? Well, yeah, they strike and protest a lot, the students as well. They don't want to go to school either. So any reason to kind of advocate, for example, in this case, sexual education or rights, they will do. But yeah, it was just a very, I would say, kind of eye-opening experience. Nice to see kind of how another education system works, and definitely bring kind of your perspective as not just an American in general, but your specific perspective as well. As Dr. Mox mentioned, like you are, this is a very diverse country. There's a lot of interesting people and places that we all come from. So definitely bring like yourself to the classroom and think about like, okay, what are my personal interests and passions? How can I maybe incorporate that into my grant? In my case, basketball is something that I quite enjoy. So actually, like met up with teachers regularly, like when I was there in Spain, when we played on the side. But that was a way to connect with students in particular, or movies, for example. So just some of those interests. There was an after-school kind of like movie club, and we'd watch films in English and kind of discuss films. So some of those things that you like to do, like that can be a part of your work. It doesn't have to be like, oh, I have to think of something like extra or something that I normally don't do. Like, oh no, like do what you do. And find students or find a country or find a grant, a purpose that kind of suits those needs. But yeah, happy to address questions. I know we'll get to that part, fortunately. But yeah, thanks for your time. Thanks for attending. Glad you could attend.
Thank you. And I don't mean to whip you all up into a froth of excitement, but we also feature an annual Fulbrighter photo contest. Right, and so the grand prize winner gets to be on the cover of a calendar that we publish every year. I don't know what other prizes we offer. I think some Walmart gift cards or something. But the pictures are amazing, right? And I love pictures. And I say, oh yeah, I've got that one. I think I've pretty much maxed out my G Drive, ASU G Drive storage with just pictures that Fulbrighters are sending in, right? Because we love the faces in various countries with other people, getting out and doing things, right? And I joked with them before we started, like, you don't sell the product, you sell the benefits of the product, right? And the benefit of Fulbright is that experience. And the benefit of any of these fellowships that we work with is the experience in and of itself. And so the wonderful thing is it can be had for free if you're willing to put in the time and effort. So how do we get started? As I mentioned, once you're ready to start the process, get into an intake. We'll sort out what type of grant, what type of award, what country you want to pursue. You'll start by picking one of the 3 types of awards. If you're not entirely sure, you can book more than one intake appointment, but that conversation is going to be specific towards one of those 3 shoots, so to speak, whether it's research and arts, graduate degree, or ETA. If you go to the ETA and you're like, I don't know about that, you're welcome to book another one. That's perfectly fine. We do this because we have different areas of specialty. And so we really encourage that, and we'll get you off on a good start, get you started on the process itself, and get you involved in our whole ecosystem as we get started. So if it does seem daunting, just remember, there's only one way to eat an elephant, one bite at a time. Right? We don't have to do all of this in one weekend. We're going to do this over a period of several weeks and months. So our first workshops will actually be starting this Friday, and for the next 4 consecutive Fridays, they'll be topical. The first one will be talking about strategies for conceiving a study research application. And so if you check our events page, you can see the topics for the upcoming ones as well. Even if you can't attend, these will all be Zoom, and they'll be recorded as well, so you can just register to express your interest, and we'll follow up with you. So that's enough talking. I'd love to hear questions from you all, and unfortunately with our virtual guests, we're not able to accept questions, but you're welcome to email us with any questions that don't get answered. But questions from the audience, for myself or for anyone on the panel. Yes? Great. So the question was for those of our panelists who did the ETA, where are they now, besides here? And what are they doing with a career, and how did the ETA relate to that?
Well, I work at Intel doing operations management. So I did not end up working in schools with children. I will completely own that. And yes, but I think Fulbright actually had nothing to do with that. I think the larger reason I ended up not following through with my commitment to teaching was the experience I had in a PhD program. I felt that there was a disconnect between the desire to serve the students and rather focus on research and an academic discourse that cut out our students from said discussion. So I wasn't very comfortable with that and actually came back to work at ASU for a bit. So though I'm not teaching students now, actually a big part of my job is actually teaching internally continuous improvement workshops. So while I'm not teaching high schoolers, teaching's still a big part of my life. It's still something I do, and I volunteer German tutoring on the side. So if that's exciting, I'm happy to hang out with you and teach you German.
I work in the study abroad, or the global education office now, actually, here at ASU. But yeah, after my year in Spain, I was teaching in Mexico before I started working in admission services. So kind of education, I kind of realized like, okay, maybe teaching can take it or leave that. You know, there's always different scenarios, or, you know, your favorite students leave and then you're like, well, why am I doing this? But no, just kidding. All students are equal and super cool. No, but just kind of realizing like, oh, I kind of like similar, like, okay, I like high school students, like why, like, A, they're like a little more with it and can hold a conversation versus like elementary school students, which at least for teaching English, that was what I was interested in. But then realizing like, oh, it's kind of that time in your life when you're kind of figuring things out and like, oh, what do I want to do next? And even now, some of you, you know, we're still there. We're always there. But yeah, just kind of, and I came back to ASU, and so now I send people away from ASU to study abroad. So it's just definitely something that like, hey, kind of like push yourself, kind of get out of your comfort zone. And that's what I would tell students. And like the London field trip, for example, was just so cool to go with them outside of kind of the normal classroom setting. But yeah, that's kind of, I would say, where I'm at. And Fulbright definitely opened doors, and people know that name even if they don't know what it means. Like people just hear Fulbright and they're like, oh, that's good, right? That's like positive, that you're special. And I guess if you say so. But yeah, definitely use it to kind of, even if you don't end up teaching, for example, like obviously the experiences kind of inform your path moving forward, and that's okay.
I'm going to answer the question kind of like the other way around. So I chose high school students, kind of the similar sense, you know, they're in a position where they're trying to figure out life and everything. And I remember me as a high school student, I didn't know what I wanted to do. During a certain amount of time, I didn't even know college was an option. So I've always felt very passionate of empowering students at that age to be able to, you know, like in a cheesy way, seek out their dreams, pursue them. So that's why I wanted to work with the high school students in Mexico. And actually, another part of my project when I was in Mexico was I convinced the principal to give me office hours so that I could talk to students, because I had students that kept coming up to me and were like asking like, wait, you're here on a scholarship? Like, how does that work? Like for them, it was the first time hearing about that intercultural exchange. And so even now I'm still connected with a lot of them, and they're like my little mentees in a way. But I've been able to guide them on applying, and some of them are here in the US now doing their own, not necessarily through Fulbright. I'm trying to convince some of them to do it. But they're here studying, and for me, just seeing that progress, I'm like, wow, this one exchange, like going to Mexico, opened a whole new world to these students, you know? And as for where I'm working now, I originally had a job offer actually in Dubai to work as a academic consultant, actually to help students apply to scholarships and be able to study abroad in the US. But for personal reasons, I had to come back home. And I'm now currently working with AFS USA, which is partnered with sponsored with the ECA, Educational Cultural Affairs Department of State. So I'm still involved in international education, and I'm still working with these high school students now, and a lot of them are through like State Department's programs. But I would love to go back to teaching because I do really feel that passion for it. So yeah.
Thank you. Other questions? Yes.
Yeah, the panelists on my far right, you also you did a business opportunity in Mexico for working for Merrill Lynch. What was that process like? What was your, starting with your Fulbright, what was your Fulbright process like? And then what was the work experience process like?
Great. So the question's specific for Bernice about the binational business grant, what that experience of applying for a business-oriented grant was like, and more about the experience itself.
Yeah, I realized I kind of skipped over a couple things. The grant was in Mexico City. It wasn't at Merrill Lynch. It was for a private single-family office, and it operated similarly to a mini Merrill Lynch per se. And I was an analyst there, and when I arrived, I realized that they had like world-class, world-renowned analysts working for them, so I couldn't really contribute that much value there. So then I started kind of shifting into project management and learning what that was, because we were missing a lot of deliverable dates in our reporting department. And then now I'm a project manager, so I kind of missed the opportunity to say that. But to your question, what did the application process look like? It was very similar to the ETA process, the statement of grant purpose, and also a personal statement. I wrote the same, I think it's the exact same prompt. I think where it changed was the actual interview process. They kind of, really dived in and asked, like, why do you want to do a business program? Why do you want to do a business program in Mexico? And that's, I think it's already been touched on a couple of times, but whatever country you decide to apply for, really dive into everything you can as early as you can about the country, because I've been an interviewer, and people bring up, very common things about Mexico, like, oh, the culinary diversity. I love eating tacos. That was something that was said in the interview. Or Day of the Dead, which is cool. That is part of Mexican culture, but there's so much more than that. Like, tell me a little bit more. So yeah, they really just asked about my business experience, why I wanted to do business in Mexico, and I just explained that I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to learn what business looks like somewhere else, and Mexico and the USA have such a tight partnership historically, economically, and interpersonally, so what a great opportunity to do it there.
Wonderful, thank you. And that's really wonderful advice. And we are going to push you in your applications, because one of the questions you're going to get asked over and over and over is, why do you want to go to this country? And we're going to push you beyond the superficial reasons, right? What reasons do you have that somebody else should care about, I guess is another way to phrase it, right? Because your own personal reasons for wanting to go to this country only matter to you, to be quite honest, right? So what value you can provide if you get to have this experience. And not all countries have an interview, unless some of you are starting to get worried. Some countries do. The majority actually do not have interviews. So the only time you would actually interview would be with our campus committee. And they're already predetermined to like you, because they're ASU faculty. So I assume that they'll like you. But yeah, if there is a component, I remember prepping you for your interview, right? And we'll do practice interviews if possible and help you get ready for those interviews. Yep. Other questions?
This one is just kind of open. Like in the past couple of years since I transferred to the ASU, I had to take on a couple jobs, like working and stuff like that. So a lot of my extracurriculars have fallen off recently in the past year or so. Like I understand that what they look at can be subjective. How important was extracurriculars to your guys' applications, in your opinion, that like don't through the process?
Thank you. So the question asked basically, how important are extracurriculars in the Fulbright application? Many of us have to work while we're in school and maybe don't have a chance to, join a bunch of clubs or play a sport or things like that. So talking about your own experiences, how important are extracurricular activities in your application from your point of view?
Can I go? Okay. maybe a similar. Never been in an ASU club in my life. I love ASU. I went to high school 2 miles away, and I work for ASU now. But always working. I guess during my time here at ASU or interning. I guess I don't know if I knew it consciously until I was like actively considering it. But if you can make your work relevant to, for example, the ETA and are like, oh, can we? Are there teaching opportunities like locally that I can participate with? Is there something I can do abroad? Can I study abroad? Can I work abroad? I would say like if you can try to make, like obviously you have other responsibilities and things to do, if there's some way that you can relate those, or just honestly like, hey, like I have a busy schedule, or here's some things that maybe this will inform my grant, like my side project that I'm thinking of. Because certainly, at least with my experience with the ETA, it was like, I think the minimum was like 16 hours a week or so. And so there's a lot of time. I taught extra, I guess, with the school, and then was, just playing basketball or things like that. So like you will have kind of time, and you can kind of build your schedule, for lack of a better word, in the country, or at least in my experience. So in the same way that you're maybe kind of like having to move pieces around and trying to find like relevant, like, oh, what am I interested in versus what do I have to do? I would say try to, in general, I know this is maybe vague advice, but try and formulate your kind of experiences, like knowing that like, hey, I'm going to apply for this. Maybe it won't work out, or maybe I'll have to, persist over years, but I will like work towards this goal that I have by hook or by crook.
To add to that, the priority for diversity in the cohort is not just simple lip service that Fulbright pays. They are very excited to see applications from non-traditional students, and I use the scare quotes there because 75% of college students in the United States are considered non-traditional, which is to say that they're in college older than 18 to 22. They didn't come right from high school. They work while they're in school. Maybe they have a child. They're veterans. They have an ability difference. All of these different factors are actually very attractive to the Fulbright readers. They love to give the opportunity to a transfer student to do a Fulbright. So it's not all Ivy League kids, right? And I do mean kids, like not 18 to 22-year-olds applying from East Coast schools. They really do want to see the widest possible variety of students. So I tell you that to encourage you to use all elements of your own personal story in the application, or start to think about that. So I do want to be conscious of our time, and if we go over, I have to pay extra on the room. So I'm kidding. I don't think I do. I might. I don't take care of that side of things. So at any rate, thank you all for coming, and thanks to our panelists for attending as well. If you have additional questions, I invite everyone to join us for refreshments. There's actually some really good-looking empanadas and things like that across the way. And so food and beverage, come enjoy that. Our panelists will be there to answer further questions. We've got a couple other Fulbright alumni in the room as well that we'd be happy to talk to you and answer all of your questions, as well as Dr. Stoff and Dr. Hobbs and myself. So again, thank you all for coming, and I can't wait to see your applications get started.